I'm opening the October 10th, 2019 meeting of the Mashpee Conservation Commission. Is there anyone in the audience who has anything they'd like to bring to the attention of the commission which is not on the agenda? Seeing none. Drew?
The first item on the pre-post agenda is the approval of the September 26, 2019 meeting minutes. We do have a quorum present for those minutes, and that's Dale McKay, Brad Sweet, Charles Dalton, and Chad Smith. We would be the only ones motioning and approving those minutes.
Motion to approve the September 26, 2019 meeting minutes.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. They're approved.
Thank you. Just some updates. One of the items you'll be signing tonight at the end of the meeting, excuse me, is an enforcement order that has been drafted for 110 Pompanesett Island Road. If you recall at the last meeting, I had this on the pre-post agenda, but I decided to table it to this meeting to give some time to get back to my consultant, who at the last time he was before you, about 3 meetings ago, he had indicated that there was some proposal to move the playground area, which had been built over a portion of coastal dune, further back, but still on the coastal dune. And the commission, as I recall, said that this really was in a negotiation sort of setting for something like that. And he said he would, indicated that he would, take this back to the homeowner. We had a conceptual plan. He had a conceptual plan that he wanted to get your take on before you went back to the homeowner. We never heard back from him from the last meeting, so he did. I reached out to him this past week, and we got an update that they are just going to wait to receive the enforcement order, and then proceed from there as far as how they're going to comply with it, or any indication thereof. There has been none. Not that I would expect that in any given scenario, but that's what they didn't come back with anything new or any sort of mitigation plan. So in the enforcement order, it will have a due date, which is typically 30 days from the day of issuance of the enforcement order to require a mitigation plan and everything that goes along with it, which is full restoration of the coastal dune area. As the commission also recalls, there was a proposal to build a raised walkway through the center halfway through the coastal dune that exists. So that's what I've drafted up, and that's what should be signed tonight.
Okay.
So any questions on that?
No.
Do we have time for one more?
Sure.
Lopez Land Swap. I attended the selectmen's meeting this past Monday evening to present the Lopez Land Swap article that was approved at the May 2018 town meeting, to just get it to the next step. The selectmen had to review that in order to send it off to the state for their review. So that took place. I just went over why the commission endorsed it. This had to do with acquiring a portion of Lopez private property that abuts the Mashpee River, and the commission viewed that as a net gain in terms of swapping out upland that contains the driveway owned by driveway easement leading to the Lopez's private lot, private home. So, and it's an equal acreage swap, and the selectmen unanimously approved. So
Great.
we'll go to that state now for their review.
Is it mostly just a rubber stamp in Boston?
No, I would say it's probably going to be discussed in detail, because from my knowledge of the abutters, on one side is Mass Fish and Wildlife on land, the other is trustees of the reservation. They do not agree with the swap. They have concerns that I don't really know in detail what the concerns are, but they, whenever you're changing the use of Article 97 land, it's very rare that that happens, whether it's building something on conservation land or selling off conservation land or changing the use of conservation land. So in other words, taking a portion currently as conservation land and transferring it over to private ownership in a swap situation like this. So there's always going to be resistance to that.
So this seems like a really good thing to do. That,
I think it's a good,
that
but
literal plan is great. So do you have a plan for being there and having,
I think it's out of our hands at this point. It's really up to the state legislature. They've got, unless they ask for additional information or testimony or something to that effect.
you're expecting a hearing of any kind?
No, it's in the legislative hands, and they have their own review process. I would only, or anyone from town be involved if they specifically request us to attend the process. Or provide something in writing. But they have the meeting minutes, they have everything documented up to this point, so.
We certainly could provide a letter, strongly supporting the.
Yes, and I would just, wait to see if that's something that they would request of. But if you want, we can certainly draft a letter to support the initiative.
It seems that our voice goes unheard now, and should be, I mean, so that they make sure that they understand that we, quite honestly, are unanimous in regards to doing this. And so therefore, it sounds like we've lost our voice, other than we've.
Well, I mean, this is similar to if at town meeting, it was a bylaw language change. And let's say it, increased in jurisdiction, extent, or enforcement, or, an increase in fines or something to that effect. It would be the same thing. It would go to the state legislature, they would vote on it. The Attorney General would weigh in on it, just like any other article at town meeting. We really aren't part of that process because our end of the process is done. And it's just up to the state to review bylaw changes or any sort of town meeting articles. So that's just my experience in going through the process, that the boards and commissions that present these changes aren't involved after that. It's just because they provided all the input they're going to provide, and then it's up to the state to decide what to do next.
So that if the hearing at the legislative level comes up, they would be looking for the pros and cons in regards to this particular article coming before them.
Correct.
So therefore, the secretariat who controls these matters and the factions within that secretariat, if they all of a sudden have an issue, isn't it also a time that we would have to stand and speak up and tell the other side of the story?
I can't answer that because I don't know. I've never had that happen before. And this is the first time we've had an article in my time with the Conservation Department that involves a land swap. Never had anything like this, so I can't really answer that question because I don't know, what would be involved.
Once we walked that property, it certainly seemed like it was like, you would say, a no-brainer.
Right.
Why not do it? But then everybody cautioned us that there could be issues when it gets to Boston. So
One of the bigger factors I think was involved is that if the Lopez's, let's just say you didn't endorse the land swap and the Lopez's wished to develop that portion of the property, even though it is within riverfront, regulatory, based on the regulations, a portion of that property would be open to development.
Yep.
And that's why I think it was, encouraged or endorsed by the commission, one of the reasons.
One of the reasons.
To acquire, to do this land swap, to protect riverfront and rare species habitat that goes along with it.
still think, well, nothing more we can do. Okay.
Okay, I'm going to open the 6 o'clock hearing for Stephen D. and Michelle H. Hurwell, LLC, 2 Summersea Road. This is for the proposed reconstruction of pier ramp and float with the addition of a platform and mitigation plantings. This was continued 8/22 and 9/12 for the submission of a detailed mitigation plan. It's an NOI.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. For the record, my name is Michael Borselli from Falmouth Engineering, and I represent the applicant, along with Blue Flex Design. Emma Votor from Blue Flex Design is here tonight. They submitted a comprehensive buffer mitigation plan with native planting to your file with specifications and details. And now, at this point, I'd like to just turn it over to Emma to present the plan to you, and we're both here for questions.
So I don't have, I'll keep this really brief. We've provided the detailed planting specifications for the mitigation area. The mitigation area size and shape has stayed exactly the same as was previously proposed. So we've proposed a mix of native species of herbaceous perennials, woody shrubs, and one understory tree. We're providing a fairly diverse mix of species and species that are going to protect the coastal bank. They're going to have deep roots and offer vegetative layering. So I think overall, we're increasing the size of the vegetative buffer and offering a good improvement. So I'm happy to answer any questions that you have about the specifications.
The owner has reviewed this plan, is comfortable with the plan?
Yes.
Drew?
So just to kind of go back to when this was first proposed and how this came about, this is a proposal for a dilapidated dock and pier. And then, which you can see in the top left photo, obviously in need of repair, a new dock. So that's pretty straightforward. And then there was a proposal as part of this for a platform, a small platform in the foreground where those two flags are, again, on the left photo. And in exchange for that, some mitigation. And the previous plan shows the mitigation area there highlighted and the platform area. And again, just kind of a close-up of the mitigation. But there was no detailed plan at the time as far as what the mitigation is comprised of. So that's what you have before you tonight is this plan that actually shows a detail of what's to be proposed in the area. If the commission finds it acceptable as in exchange for a platform that is wider than 4 feet, which exceeds the requirements under dock and pier, fixed pier width. The difference in this particular application compared to an application that said has a deck halfway down the walkway, or something similar to that, out over the water, out over the BW, out over the bank. This is landward of all of those resource areas, and in an area that is currently just grass and turf. So, in looking at this, and I think the reason the commission afforded an opportunity to look at a more detailed planting plan in exchange for this, even though it's not really something that you have approved in the past, the exchange in this case may result in a real net benefit of providing a buffer to the top of Coastal Bank where there just really isn't any currently. So that's just, to bring you up to the current proposal before you. And I agree, the planting list looks good. It's all native species and then a mix in of pollinator species. So overall, certainly, a comprehensive list of mitigation plantings. And given what the impact would be from this platform, which is really negligible, in my opinion, to what you're getting in exchange,
Is it permeable?
I don't know.
The platform.
The decking will be the same decking that's on the walkway to the dock. It'll have gaps, in the planking. There's no wetland vegetation under it, so it would just be standard decking like any residential deck.
3/4 inch spacing.
3/4 inch spacing.
You're not really protecting anything
Yeah.
underneath it except lawn. So, the spacing really comes into play when it's going out over resource areas like that.
Oh, I'm just wondering if it's permeable, that's all. So there are trees being removed? No?
There's nothing
There's nothing
in the footprint of the deck. This photo shows it best, the top left. That's pretty much the area, top photo there. Shows again, pretty much where that, the sections of old dock material are. And to the right of that is where the deck footprint is proposed.
Right, so those trees that you can see there are
Those trees aren't proposed to be removed. Yeah. It's landward of those trees that the deck is proposed.
I have no questions. don't hear anything, I would say that I would move that we close an issue in regards to the application of Stephen and Michelle Herwald at 2 Summersea Road.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
It's approved.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is that the same stuff?
That's what you read and digested.
Thoroughly.
I'm opening the 603 hearing for Thomas D. Cleary, 4 Wheelhouse Lane, for the permitting of an existing state licensed dock. This is an RDA. Just identify yourself for the record and briefly describe the project.
My name is Jack Cleary. I'm no relative of Tom. We are friends, neighbors, and we are buying his house so soon, so, but he asked me to come instead.
So can you describe what you're asking for, or he's asking for? Just briefly.
I didn't know I had to give a speech. I believe all he's asking for is confirmation of what, it's been licensed with the state, registered with the state, whatever the right words are. And I'm not a dock person, so I don't know a whole lot about it, but I think he's just looking to have it, whatever approval it is that the town gives on top of the state registration/license.
Drew?
So, it's too bad he's not here. That's
He's in Florida.
Florida. I did have some questions, just, I mean, it's a straightforward application, but the thing that we looked into was how a dock could get state license without a local permit, particularly a coastal dock. So when we did the research and looked into the registry of deeds, we found that this property, 4 Wheelhouse, was actually 45, lot 45 at the time when the dock was put in. It's back in 1987, 88. So it's a completely different lot reference than the current address, and that's why we couldn't find anything. So we did find the DEP permit number. I think it was 43-357, so a very old permit that was issued back in 1988 or 87, somewhere around there. And then subsequently got a Chapter 91 license. The thing that we still are unclear of, because we couldn't find in our records any evidence of recording of that permit. So when the Conservation Commission issues a permit, the first thing that needs to be done is it needs to be taken to the registry of deeds and get recorded in order for it to be a legally binding permit. In order for the project to actually proceed, they have to have it recorded. And we didn't have any.
He recorded back in 1987 or whatever, 88.
Yeah, after it was
I
issued.
mean, he didn't own the house at the time. It was a fellow named Jerry Epstein who owned that house, and he owned a lot 2 doors down.
Right.
And I think that was part of the confusion. Apparently, there was some mix-up in terms of which lots they related to.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, so I guess,
I don't even know that Tom would know much about what happened in 87 or 88.
well, I mean, the one way to find out is to contact the registry of deeds and see what they have on file. Because if they don't have a recorded copy, I mean, if it was recorded, they would have it in their files, 100%. So if it's not there, that's why I wanted to speak to Mr. Cleary to see if he could do that research and look at the registry of deeds. The reason I'm asking for that is because if the commission reviews something that was issued a local permit and it was never recorded, it's not a legal permit. And it would be cart before the horse to approve a state license if the local license was never recorded. So that really needs to be vetted out, and the homeowner needs to contact the Barnstable County Registry.
I believe that the realtor who worked with him on sale of the house had done some work with the,
We need to see that.
But that's just- If they've done it, then,
Yeah, I mean,
press
if they
print
could
and
produce the
bring it to us.
documentation, There's nothing on the file that indicates that that was the case, so. The other issue is that this dock, and I've talked to Chapter 91 about it, has no public access up and over at mean high water, which is a requirement from the state. So I talked to the state, they said it's still it's a situation, because I asked if it's a requirement for Chapter 91, and they've issued 2 permits for this dock, why doesn't it have public access? The response I got was that public access is legally required, and if there's no provisions for it, the homeowner has to, if anyone was to try and traverse up and over the dock, they could make a legal case that access has to be provided. I think the simpler way is to simply require it at this point in time, or, if this is to be continued, to find out about the legal standing of the dock itself and the permit, that can be part of an approval process, that stairways be put in for up and over access. There's no room at mean high water on this dock to walk underneath it. It's less than 3 feet at that point, the separation from the salt marsh. So it's physically impossible to walk underneath it. So that means stairways have to be put to allow access up and over for the general public to fish, fowl, and navigate under Chapter 91. So there's a few things that just need to be vetted out with this project before I would recommend that the commission,
Is this also connected to the fact that all along Great River, all of these properties around there, there's a piece of property that still has connection to New Seabury?
Correct.
And therefore you need an easement to get over the New
Correct.
Seabury property to get to the water?
Yes.
Okay. it's all tied
That's
in.
not, we didn't see any issue with that.
Right.
But we can't find the order, we can't find the actual written order of conditions. We have all the plans, like you see up here, they're the same plans in our scanned files, but we don't have the order of conditions. And if the Registry of Deeds doesn't have the order of conditions in a recorded format, that means they were never recorded, and that means this dock is not legal. And it's not to say that it could not easily become legal. It's just a matter of really finding that out and getting the documentation to that effect, because we don't have it.
Do we know when?
Except that the stairway needs to be provided, right?
And the stairway needs to be
Can
added.
you explain that to me, because I have no idea what you're talking about?
So
Not
any
being a-
permit that's issued by this commission
Yeah.
under a notice of intent, which is required for all docks and piers in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, a notice of intent.
Okay.
The permit that's issued is called an order of conditions. When that order of conditions is issued, the very first thing that happens is it gets taken to the local registry of
No,
deeds.
no, I
and it's
understand that
recorded.
point.
Right.
The up and over point, I don't
Oh,
understand.
the up and over, sorry. So under Chapter 91, which is the State Waterways Licensing Agency, there is a law that requires navigation of the public along the shorelines of of the Commonwealth, coastal areas to fish, fowl, and navigate, meaning you have to accommodate public access either underneath structures at mean high water, docks and piers, or up and over if underneath is not feasible. Where mean high water is located on this dock is less than 3 feet of separation. That's not enough room to get
Separation from the dock.
on the salt marsh, from the mean high water mark, the high tide line. That's the standard, that's the area where access is granted to the public. If you can't get underneath a structure, provisions have to be made to get up and over it by virtue of access stairways on either side, removal of the railings to access, for public to access up and over the dock and get by it without going around it into the water. That's why it's at mean high
So
water.
you need to add stairs to the dock so they can come up and walk up.
Correct.
Okay.
Do we know when Mr. Cleary will be home from Florida?
He's coming back, we're supposed to close on the 28th, so he's coming back, I think, the Thursday before that, so, the 24th or something.
So we should be back before our next meeting, should we choose to continue.
When is the next meeting?
Next meeting
2
is
weeks hence.
October, October 24th,
October 24th?
correct.
I think he's coming back around then, but he did give me some, I apologize, I was late getting here, I ran from Boston, and I do have some stuff that he gave me at the house, so it's possible that the registrations you're talking about are there, and could I bring them up to you?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, yeah, if you have, we can review what documentation you have. If it's there, great. I would still recommend a continuance to allow time for that.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
yeah, that would be great, yeah.
So bring you that documentation, and then how do we deal with the stairway thing?
So the commission, if, it seems kind of an odd feedback from Chapter 91 to wait for somebody to, file a complaint against a homeowner for lack of access. If that occurrence were to ever happen, it may be remote, it may not be. But it seems like that's kind of an extreme way to go about it when the commission can simply require access up and over to avoid that scenario. And that's what I would recommend, so.
Is an
when-
RDA adequate?
Yeah, an REA will be fine. And then, so if the
What's an
commission-
REA?
It's another type of permit, a simpler type of permit. It's the same permit that you're that
Requesting.
Mr. Cleary has before the commission right now. It would just have to be revised to include access stairways at mean high water.
And we get Little River Boatyard or someone to do that, is that?
Yeah, a marine contractor should be able to do it pretty easily. Yep.
Do we know what date and time what time we would have for the continuance?
So under the rules, we can only continue a hearing if we're requested to do so. So
Well, I'd like to request a continuance rather than rejection, if that's the choice.
That's the course choice.
So, why is 6 o'clock? This would be for 6 PM on October 24th.
We don't have any other questions. I'd like to motion for a continuance for the Four Wheelhouse Lane permitting of state licensing and dock to 10/24 at 6 PM.
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
It's continued.
So just reach out to me, give us a call, and we'll review that documentation. We'll get it all sorted out.
Great,
Okay, thank you.
I'm opening the 606 hearing for Gary S. and Marlene S. Perkins, 8 Bowsprit Point. This is for the proposed removal and reconstruction of a pier ramp float pile structure with the addition of kayak racks and hardscaping and landscaping modifications. This has been continued from September 26th so that the retaining wall could be relocated and some other issues could be addressed regarding the lawn. It's an NOI.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the record, Matt Costa, Cape and Islands Engineering, representing the applicants. We're here tonight under a notice of intent application to rebuild the existing pier walkway, install a new landscape retaining wall, and regrade and reseed lawn area, and allow existing lawn area on the water side of the wall to go back to natural state, portion of which is in BBW area. Drew has the site pulled up in the, pardon me, on the screen. You can see we're at Bowsprit, right here on this property. And we have an existing pier on the site, and we have, right in this location, you can see the existing lawn area. And what's hard to see is that there's existing walkway and landscape features. There they are, right along, right in the BBW area, leading up to the pier. So just to give you a quick recap, your resource areas for this project include land under the ocean, salt marsh, BBW, land subject to coastal storm flowage. This is a flood zone, this is an A zone. We're not in a velocity zone for this area. You can see on the plan, in the profile view here, what we're doing is, as Drew showed you in that picture, that walkway sits right on top of the marsh. And what we're going to do is we're going to pick this walkway up. We're going to use these existing piles. We're going to pick this walkway up to the height of the tops of the piles. We're going to continue this walkway out into the lawn area here. And then there will be a retaining wall in this area here. The walkway will extend to the top of the retaining wall, and then there'll be some stairs, a set of steps down to the lawn area. You can see that these stakes, I believe, are the BVW line. That wetland line actually is in the lawn area. Prior owners had done this work, and there is an open order of conditions on the site for Phragmite eradication plan. This work was initially resolved through the order of conditions, and they are ongoing with the Phragmite eradication plan. It is effective at this point in eliminating the Phragmites in this area. We're going to be removing all of this. The BVW, we're going to seed that area, and after we remove those items, and that will be black grass. That's a species suitable for this location where it could be inundated during storms. In high tides, moon tide type of situations, this is a pretty low area. We're also going to be planting native grass on the landward side of the wall as a buffer from the lawn area to the wall. And this entire lawn area will be regraded and reseeded in accordance with Mashpee's lawn standards. There will be some public access steps due to the height of the pier. There will be some public access steps that we're going to add right where we start to extend the pier. So this is the area where it's existing. That's where we're going to pick it up and raise it. There'll be a set of steps there, and then there'll be a new pier constructed, elevated over the resource areas that will then land on top of the wall. And that's illustrated right in your profile view right there. Additionally, there are two piles that are going to be added to the float. This float only has two piles supporting it, so they add two piles to further support it. There's no other work being proposed to the ramps, the floats, or anything there. There was a kayak rack in this area over here. That's actually already been removed from that area. We did work with Drew on this, in reviewing the proposal. The initial proposal, this is different from the initial. We have effectively moved back and given back this, moved the wall back from where it was proposed, and now all of this lawn area will be effectively returning to its natural state. So this project has been designed for an overarching net environmental benefit. By way of raising the existing pier and increasing the light penetration to the vegetation underneath, removing the walkways in the resource areas, relocating the lawn area further back, and increasing natural habitat. Furthermore, the existing lawn area will be reconstructed in a more environmental friendly manner under the lawn standards. We believe this project meets the applicable performance standards as we have articulated in our narrative, and we respectfully request you issue an order of conditions. Happy to answer any questions.
What is the estimated height of the wall that you propose? I'm trying to find
It's
3.5,
it's about 26 inches high.
46 inches. Good. Just walking that property, clearly you need a good couple of feet. It's pretty low in there, and that Spinnaker Cove, when it floods, and probably this evening, you'll probably find that the water is up, or depending upon tides, will become flood several feet up onto that lawn. So I think this is a good proposal.
So what makes it okay to put in a retaining wall where there isn't one now?
Well, it's, I mean, the purpose of the wall is really to protect for storm damage prevention. That's the key purpose of the wall. So there was a letter from Marine Fisheries that was, commented on the dock, and they had made it known about the their concerns about migration of salt marsh and BVW in anticipation of sea level rise. So where the wall was originally located, I had recommended that it be pushed back to its current location. I think by virtue of doing that, you're getting it out of BVW. You're allowing for that sea level rise and salt marsh migration to happen naturally. You're eliminating lawn that was, for the most part, covering over BVW. And so that, the original location of the wall, I didn't think met the performance standards. I think by setting it back, it does meet the performance standards. And it's really, the performance standards are based on long-term health of the salt marsh in anticipation of sea level rise. So I don't see it, I do see it as a much greater improvement over the existing conditions, which is now occupied by, BVW occupied by lawn and at-grade patio and.
It certainly is, but
Yeah.
generally, we're no longer allowing new retaining walls that are solid structures like this.
Well, there are provisions under the State Wetlands Protection Act and mirrored under the bylaw for eroding coastal banks and retaining walls, walling them off with structure. There's no coastal bank here. This is transition from upland to BVW to salt marsh to land under ocean. So you don't have coastal bank. There's no erosion here. The primary concern is flooding because of the base elevation of that area of the property in comparison to the water. So that doesn't apply to this particular situation. Yep.
Additionally, we are in a A zone, not a velocity zone, and this is a protected area. So we're not worried about any sort of deflection that might happen from wave action. The wall is not very high at all. In any moderate storm, that area most likely would be flooded above the wall that is there. This is a protective measure to stop the incremental increases in flooding of their usable yard area. It is all legally previously developed area that we're working within. And the overarching net benefit here is not only just habitat, but with the addition of the salt marsh and BVW areas there, there is no loss of any sort of flood storage capacity or anything like that. So we do feel and agree with Drew that this does meet those standards.
Probably an increase in flood storage capacity, actually, in the absorption of BVW.
Hard
once
to
it
measure,
becomes
hard to measure, but yeah,
established.
it's an definite improvement.
Yeah, it's definitely an improvement. I don't think there's any doubt about that.
You can see fiddler crab holes coming up through the pavers.
It's
I thought that was
Interesting
pretty
area.
amusing.
Well, I would move that we close an issue in regards to the application of Gary S. and Marlene Perkins at 8 Bowsprit Point.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
I think I'm gonna eliminate paper clips from being used and go with those, whatever they're called.
Bags of
Yeah,
chips.
she needs bigger paper clips.
Alligator clips.
You see it stuck to each other.
Mr. Chairman?
Thank you.
I'm opening the 609 hearing for New Seabury, Marshall condominium owners, 358 Shore Drive West. This is for the proposed extension of a beach nourishment from revetment to below mean high water and redesign of permitted beach profile. This was continued from September 26 because it had not been reviewed by the DEP. It is an NOI.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Charlie Agro. I'm with Coastal Engineering, and I'm here representing Mashpee Village Condominiums, who's the applicant. And the proposed project is to expand their current beach nourishment footprint below mean high water, as shown on the plan. Coastal Engineering has been involved with Mashpee condominiums for the past 2 years now with their annual nourishment project. Their annual nourishment project is a requirement that's based on the revetment that was constructed back in the 1990s, I believe, back in 1995 or so. And they've been placing beach nourishment ever since the completion of the construction. As stated in the original order of conditions, they're required to place approximately 2,650 cubic yards of sediment, which annually, which is based on surveying. And every year we go out around February and conduct a survey of the beach to determine the volume to restore the beach to its previous profile from 1995. And over the past couple years that we've been involved there, we've noticed that even after placing the required beach nourishment, that the beach is generally losing elevation. And we also noticed that as sea levels continue to rise and mean high water lines continue to rise, and as the beach continues to erode, the mean high water line is going to get closer and closer to the revetment. And right now, there is no Chapter 91 waterways permit to place nourishment below mean high water. Originally, there was a Chapter 91 permit to place nourishment below mean high water, but that's been expired in 2011. And since then, the nourishment's been placed up to the mean high water line. And if we continue to do that the way the beach is starting to erode out there and due to the dynamics of the area, eventually there's going to be no beach left to place the nourishment. Some of the issues with this site is that in the summertime, when the beach is typically used the most, the prevailing winds are out of the southwest direction, creating a longshore current from west to east, and which means that sand is moving from the west side of the coast to the east side. And in this scenario, there really isn't much of a beach to the west of the condominiums beach. So in this case, there's really no sand that's naturally replenishing the beach after the nourishment is completed. A lot of the sand is moving in the east direction in this area. It's actually interesting in this site that during nor'easters such as this one, they get naturally replenished due to a reversal of that concept, and the sand is actually moving from the east to the west. And we saw that during Hurricane Dorian. The beach rose a good foot and a half or so. So the proposal is to place nourishment below mean high water with the profile that's shown on the plans. The green line on the proposed typical beach profile, section 5+00, is what was previously permitted under the Chapter 91 fill permit, and the red line is the new proposed beach profile. The green line shows a flat section of the beach known as the berm with a 3-to-1 slope out to the water. From our experience, we've seen a 3-to-1 slope can cause a scarp over the beach because the steep slope allows the sand to fall off, and as water hits it, it's almost like hitting a wall, and it can cause more erosion. We've designed a new profile with a 1-on-10 slope down below the mean high water line, and that allows water to move up and down the beach and hopefully limits erosion. And the new profile compared to the green profile from 1995 kind of balances out the amount of nourishment that would need to be placed. I was able to generate that original profile, the green line, on the computer program and figure out how much volume would be required to fill that template. And I redesigned a new template with a more gradual slope that we've had more success with in beach nourishment projects. And I tried to maintain that same volume. The volume to the original profile, I believe, was about 13,900 cubic yards, and the new proposed volume is about 14,200 cubic yards. And another thing that I also wanted to make a point was the condo association is going to continue to at least place their required nourishment every season based on the survey. They also are very concerned with the status of their beach, and they've called it the pride of their property and their most valuable asset. So they want to do anything they can to maintain the beach and keep it around. And so there might be some years where a lot of nourishment is needed to redevelop this this proposed profile that we have here. There may be some years that they want to place the full quantity to reconstruct the beach as it's shown here. There might be some other years they want to just stick with their minimum requirement. There may be some years the beach naturally gains sand, but more likely than not, there's going to be a loss of sand. The performance standards for this project are the coastal beach, land under the ocean, and the coastal bank. The proposed project will benefit the coastal beach because we're adding beach compatible sand to the beach itself, and thus adding more volume to the littoral transport system. Prior to placing the beach fill every year, we do grain size distribution samples from the beach and from the proposed sand pit, just to make sure that the sand from the sand pit is gonna be compatible with what's on the beach. The coastal bank, the toe of the coastal bank is gonna be covered with more nourishment, which will provide a buffer to the coastal bank and the revetment that lies behind the sand. So this is gonna add more protection to the coastal bank, and it's again gonna add more sediment to the system. There's an existing revetment and a concern with existing revetments, which is why the original project had a beach nourishment permit required, is that the revetments take away sand from the natural transport system. So this proposed project to increase the amount of sand that's gonna be placed along the beach will be a benefit for the coastal bank. Land under the ocean will not be negatively affected as a result of this project, because again, it's gonna be beach compatible sand. The water is still allowed to run up and down the beach as it does naturally now. The slope is gonna match the natural slope of the beach, the 1-on-10 slope. If you look at the existing profiles of the beach, the dark dashed line, the slope just to the seaward side of the revetment is about a 1-on-10 slope, and it's just lower than what the proposed grade is now. So by matching that slope, we're not gonna affect the water circulation or water quality in the area. And I'd be happy to answer any other questions at this time.
Drew? Just to add on to the input on the regulatory authorities on this. This was issued a DEP number, so it, it was opened. And also, two state agencies, Division of Marine Fisheries and Natural Heritage and Endangered Species Program, submitted letters, comment letters for this. Marine Fisheries identify the area as land, not land-containing shellfish, which is of their primary concern. So they signed off on it. And Natural Heritage and Endangered Species Program also issued a letter of no-take status regarding shorebird habitat, which is their species of special concern out there. In fact, in that letter, they did mention that the addition of sand into the system, into the intertidal area below mean high water, would be actually a net benefit for shorebird habitat. So they also signed off on this project. So, and just to kind of show you some of the pictures, if you haven't been out there, top photo really shows the western end, where it's just really being starved based on the primary sediment drift along this section of coastline. So you can see it's a very thin strip. Bottom photo shows it even better kind of in perspective. As you get further and further east, the wider the beach gets. So it's really showing what the impact is of that sediment drift. And as it meets the beginning of the series of revetment walls on Triton, that's really where the profile is almost gone. And it's just a matter of time, if nothing is done, that profile, the mean high water, will reach the base of the wall and the profile will be gone, and you can't reestablish it after that. So I think it's definitely an improvement, and the measures will hopefully help to reestablish the profile, particularly in that area, and save the profile of the beach moving forward. So all relevant agencies have signed off on this, and I don't have any other comments. I would recommend a close an issue.
Does anyone in the audience have any comments or questions?
I would motion that we close an issue for the 358 Shore Drive West proposed extension, beach nourishment and revetment.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much.
I'm opening the 612 hearing for Edgar L. and Ardeen J. Shepherd, 4 Wilson's Grove. This is a proposed septic system upgrade. Continued from September 26th, at which time no one attended to present the proposal. It is an RDA.
Good evening. For the record, my name is Wayne Tavares. I'm representing Mr. Shepherd in his endeavor to upgrade his septic system. The garage you're looking, the driveway you're looking at in the blue square is the entire area that has to be cleaned out. I staked it, and it's the only place on the site. These are the little postage stamp sites in Papaneset that don't offer a lot of opportunity and often ask for waivers from the local Board of Health. So in this particular case, the only reason we're before you is that this site is in a landlocked flood zone. So without much ado, it is an improvement in its own right by, as far as mitigation is concerned, to put this system in. And any questions you might have, I'd be glad to answer. Do you have the plans, Drew?
Yeah.
Oh, they are. Okay, thank you.
So Board of Health has received the application under review. Yeah, just like was described, it's a landlocked lot in the flood zone. Going back to the satellite, you can see it's pretty set, well outside of any other resource areas, which would be coastal bank, coastal beach, coastal dune. So it's simply land subject to coastal storm flow. All work being contained within the driveway layout as was described, and just some photos to show that, that area. The driveway replacement, I don't know if you know or not, is it going to be paved over again, or?
Yeah, they'll have to vent this system in order to do the same thing.
Okay.
Yeah. It's the only access they have.
Right. Okay. So pretty straightforward, no other comments?
Does anyone in the audience have any comments or questions?
Motion for negative determination for the proposed septic system upgrade at 4 Wilson's Grove.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Approved.
Thank you.
I'm opening the 6:15 hearing. William F. Keenly, Catherine F. Keenly, and Joan Walker, 151 Shore Drive. This is for the proposed brush and hazardous tree removal. It is an RDA. So identify yourself and
I'm
briefly.
sorry, my name is Joan Walker, and I live at 151 Shore Drive.
And your,
And I'm sorry, that's my son.
so your intention here is to,
To remove some of the pine trees that are in the backyard, mainly because in weather like today's, they really sway back and forth, and we have concerns of them falling on the house. And then from that microburst that we had, some of the trees along the pond were knocked over, and if anything, we'd like to clean them up somewhat, so they're not so invasive on the backyard.
Drew?
So I did go out, excuse me, I went out to the property to take a look. It's kind of hard to see that. You can see at the bottom right photo shows the 4 out of the 6, and the top, you can see the 2 trees on the right. One's badly leaning towards the house. The other one is also leaning towards the house. They're all leaning towards the house, essentially. Did have an arborist go out and perform an assessment, which should be in your, I think it's in your, is it in your packet or not?
How far are the trees away from Dean's Pond, would you say, Jim?
What's that?
How close would you guess they are from Dean's Pond?
They're all within 50 feet.
Within 50? Is the pond probably also damaging root systems? Is it that close?
No, they're not along the shoreline, so they're in the outer,
Okay.
40 to 50-foot setback, I would say. Some are further out than others. So it was Hamilton Tree and Landscaping that went out to do the assessment of the trees. Under their description of removing 6 pitch pines, remove 6 pitch pines to the rear of the house, which are close enough and leaning towards the house. 5 trees were marked correctly at the time of the site visit. A 6th tree located to the far left of the backyard was not deemed a hazard. However, a 6th tree located near the right, which is the heavily leaning one in the top photo to the right, and the mulch area near the backyard was deemed to be a potential hazard to the home. Remove a dead tree to the near right of the lot, standing by the water's edge, and there appears to be no access to the backyard, and all trees will need to be climbed and hauled out as a description of work methodology. So one of the things that I wanted to get more information on was, I mean, I understand the trees are leaning, and pitch pines, are certainly susceptible to wind damage, probably more than hardwoods. The question is that, aside from the obvious leaners, which you can see in the top right photo, have the trees been inspected, or is there any information on the inspection of the trees from their current health standpoint? And I didn't see that anywhere in Hamilton's assessment. Did they
I wasn't
discuss
aware
that
that I
with
should
you,
do
or
that.
what's that?
I wasn't aware that I should do that.
Well, the reason I ask is because when people are looking to have trees removed, and I understand they sway in the wind, it's useful information to have to assess what the current health of the tree is. And
Okay.
based on that assessment, you can tell just how likely or unlikely it is that they will fall in a storm. So the absence of that information is really kind of important.
Yeah.
Can you get that information from Hamilton? Because I think it's relevant. I mean, the 2 trees that I see in the top right photo, I absolutely agree they should be removed. The remaining ones, I know they're close to the house. None of them express any infestation from pine borer beetle, which is the primary impact to pitch pines in this area. I just didn't see anything, and I'm not an arborist, so preface that first. I didn't see anything based on my experience of reviewing many of these proposals for pitch pines, indicative of anything affecting the tree's health. So when that's the case, there may be some alleviation through pruning rather than outright removal.
Okay.
I just think that the information on how the arborist went about assessing the hazard nature of the trees is just flat out missing from the assessment. So, and that's pretty key information to have.
Okay.
So if we can get that information, and generally speaking, the commission goes with the arborist's recommendation. So it's, it's just key information that they really should be made aware of.
Okay.
If he says these are the reasons why the trees should come down based on their health, these are the things that are impacting their health, that's fine. It's just, we don't know.
Okay.
So,
The 2 that are obviously leaning, should he inspect those also?
no,
or
I don't
those
think
are
those
okay?
require inspection. I think it's obvious. There's
Okay.
bulging there's root flaring at the base, and the one that's leaning in the background is almost up out of the ground with
All right.
the root system. So those are very straightforward and obvious. It's the other ones that I have some
Okay.
questions on. I'm not saying that they're not hazard. I'm not saying
Right.
that at all.
No, I
just
understand.
put a
That's
little
fine.
more
I
information on
understand
them.
that.
That's
So if we continue to the next meeting, the arborist can get back to you and you share
Can I
with
bring the
us his
information
report.
with me?
Or if you would, another option would be to have our staff work with the homeowner and make a
Fine.
determination on how many of the other trees should be removed based on, further assessment from the arborist. It's your discretion, that's just another option.
We can condition an RDA in that.
Yeah.
All right, that would be excellent.
Let's do that.
I have a question about the dead tree. Is it, why
yeah.
is it being removed?
Well, that was the other, sorry, yes, thank you. I did have a question on that one too. I understand it's dying, it's a dead tree, it's fallen over. I don't know, I didn't go back there to see if it's actually impacting other vegetation. If that's the case, I would certainly recommend its removal. It's something we could take another look at. If it's just a visual thing in a part of the yard that's not really part of the usable part of the yard, it's generally, those things are left alone.
Okay.
But if it's something that, you know, the exposed roots are gonna lead to erosion because it is close to the pond, and if it's, you know, leaning over existing vegetation that may kill it off, if it remains there, those are certainly valid reasons to have it removed. So
Okay.
it's something that I can take a closer look at.
But I mean, it's
Good determination.
good habitat for some, in some ways,
Absolutely.
and
Yeah, I didn't walk right up to it and see, you know, if there are any impacts, which there very well might be, so
okay.
we can certainly take a look at that.
Yes. My other question too was on the cleanup, removal, or whatever I'm allowed to do of the trees that were impacted by the microburst. There, like I said, I don't see any clear pictures of it, that's the only problem.
Is it kind of like behind the area where the top photo is taken, or is it to the right of that, or?
It's to the left of that. In fact,
Okay.
in fact, no, I take that back. There is one down to,
I
with
thought
a,
there was one kind of to the right there that.
Yeah.
And then generally behind that
and then
row
there's
of-
a maple to the left that is just everywhere.
Okay,
you know.
we could take a look at that.
Okay.
I think you could probably clean that up. That looks like it's kind of hovering over everything.
It
and
is.
and
It's just-
should be removed.
Yeah, I don't think any creature would want to live there.
Well, you'd be surprised.
So shall I contact your office as far as having somebody
Well,
come out and do
we'll let
the
the
test?
commission render a decision first, and
Okay.
as far as how they want to proceed, and then we can communicate after that.
Okay.
Are there any comments or questions from the audience?
A motion for a negative determination based on the condition that the homeowner work with the conservation agent over the issues voiced for 151 Shore Drive.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
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 So negative determination means approval. It's counterintuitive, but, so we'll schedule time to go out there and walk it together, look at it. In the
Okay.
meantime, contact Hamilton and see if you can get a little more information on how they went about assessing the hazard trees. I know visually they look like a hazard, there's no doubt about it. I
Right.
just want to get a little more insight
No,
as to
I
how they
understand.
arrived at that they should be removed. So we'll just schedule a time to go out there and go over all that.
So are you going to call me or shall I call you?
You can call us and we'll schedule an appointment. If I'm not there, talk to Cynthia, she's the secretary, and she'll schedule something for us.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I'm opening this one I believe is, I'm opening the 618 hearing for David G. Peck, 1 Chestnut Street. This is a proposed vista pruning. The applicant has requested that we continue until December 14th at 6 PM.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
It's continued.
Thank you.
I'm opening the 621 hearing for Diana M., I have no idea how to pronounce that, Laches, 44 Barbary Circle. This is for the proposed demolition, reconstruction, and expansion of a portion of dwelling and installation of mitigation planning, and it's an NOI.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members of the commission, for the record, my name is Michael Borselli from Falmouth Engineering, and I represent the applicant. The applicant has been before this commission on a couple of previous occasions. One order of conditions was issued for work related to the dock. Another one was for work related to coastal bank stabilization through planting. In fact, on your agenda later tonight, there's 2 requests for certificates of compliance for those orders of conditions. We filed for those simultaneously with this new application. The property in question's at 44 Barberry Circle. It is also, has a water frontage on the Mashpee River. There's a salt marsh system, coastal bank, and land subject to coastal storm flowage. The land subject to coastal storm flowage is east of the proposed project, and the no work is proposed within land subject to coastal storm flowage. There's an existing single-family dwelling on the property. If you make reference to page 1 of 2 of the plan set, it shows existing conditions, including the outside patio and other appurtenances, a small shed. The top of coastal bank has been delineated. We're also in a riverfront area, although I don't believe there's any issues regulatorily with that, and I'll go into that in a second. Basically, this is a minor renovation to the existing house that would result in a modest expansion of the existing garage towards the street, away from the wetland resource, and slightly to the side, approximately 4 feet or so to the side, into an area that's already foundation plantings and a lawn area. There's also a proposal to put a covered porch on the front of the house on the street side as well. So these proposed activities are effectively in areas that have already been altered and landscaped, or they're either a sidewalk leading to the front door, or they're a driveway. So the Rivers Act and the regulations associated with it allow you to make some alterations to undisturbed areas in the outer riparian zone. This work is in the outer riparian zone, but there's no clearing or alteration. The alteration was already performed when the house was built, so I don't believe there's really any performance standards that we need to pay attention to with regard to the Rivers Act, but I still identify it as being in the riverfront area. What does apply in this case, I believe, is your buffer planting policy as it relates to increases in impervious surfaces on the ground. You have a graded scale that requires a ratio of plantings for increases depending on its proximity to the wetland resource. In this case, the wetland resource is a coastal bank. Some of the expansion to the side of the house is increasing the footprint. Some of it towards the street is expanding in a place that's already pavement. But if you go through the math, we did a calculation and determined that there was still a need for 475 square feet of mitigation planting. We proposed to round that up to 500 square feet, and we show it on page 2 of the plan set, shaded in a yellow, and we're trying to plant it where we can adjacent to the top of the coastal bank. So some of it is proposed between the shed and the top of the coastal bank. And then we run it along the property line to fill out the remaining requirement for the total 500 square feet. And we're proposing the plants to be used to be arrowwood viburnum, or an alternative if the commission staff doesn't think that's appropriate for this area. That pretty much sums up the project. There's no impacts to the wetland resources. It's a modest renovation to the house, and we're hopeful you can issue an order of conditions. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
How many viburnums will be installed? It just says it will be that plant, but it doesn't specify how many will be in that 500 square feet.
I specify the size and the spacing of the plantings. I didn't actually count out how many would be needed for that. I can figure that out if you'd like and submit it.
Well, that's probably up to Drew.
I mean, you can go by if you got the square footage of the mitigation area and you know what gallon size the nursery has available, 1 or 2 gallon are typical nursery gallon sizes. And then there's, typical spacing requirements depending on the gallon size. So I don't think it's necessary to come up with an actual count based on all that other information. I would recommend kind of maybe mixing it up with a couple of different alternative plantings, just so we have a little diversity in there. It's not just one type of shrub. But we can certainly work to figure that out, so.
Be happy to take your recommendation.
Just some photos of the project site, top left, looking at the property from the road. Bottom left, showing the footprint of the expansion of the garage, and where the shed is in the background, so the area to the right of the shed, that's the area proposed to the mitigation, and then behind the shed as well. Bottom right just shows a shot of, this is actually behind that stake, those shrubs, and there's more to the left and to the right of that. That's mitigation that was done for some hardscaping and deck work that was authorized under a previous permit that just received the certificate of compliance request for tonight's meeting as well. Both COC requests have passed inspection, and the mitigation looks great. It's really, the homeowner's done a great job in maintaining, and all of those plantings are flourishing. So that mitigation has taken hold, which is nice to see. So again, just a couple more shots a little closer up to the shed area to show that mitigation area behind it. And then just so you can see the layout of the backyard, there's some more of the work that was previously permitted under that hardscaping permit that was issued previously. And then bottom right, just to kind of show the resource area, that's the Mashpee River in the background. You've got fairly steep coastal bank leading down to the Mashpee River from the edge of the patio there. The one thing I already talked to Mike about this is that the bottom left photo, the homeowner put in some aggregate there, concrete blocks, because it's kind of getting gullied out with runoff. So that was an attempt to kind of, dissipate that runoff in that area, which I, completely understand from previous site visits. It's just been a routine problem with washout. But in talking to Mike, I think we can come up with some better aggregate. Riprap stone would probably be a little more suitable than concrete blocks in that area to get it kind of a little more organic, I guess, to control that runoff situation. I mean, I understand why they're there, and something needs to be there to break up the runoff, so I just don't think that's the right kind of material to use. So that's something that we can work with the homeowner on and kind of switch out material there. As far as the riverfront, it is all entirely within the outer riparian and all entirely within previously disturbed areas. So it does meet the performance standards for riverfront. And then with our mitigation calculation chart, getting within that 50-foot setback from the top of bank, which triggers that mitigation, the calculations have been met, and what's being offered up actually exceeds what the calculations pan out for mitigation based on the proposed impervious structure. So given all those factors, it meets all the performance standards under the state and local wetland protection acts, and I would recommend close an issue.
Are there any questions from the audience?
No. Motion that we close and issue the proposed demolition, reconstruction, and expansion at 44 Barberry Circle.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Approved. I'm opening the 624 hearing for Sandra H. Weiner, trustee, 107 Tide Run. This is a proposed septic system upgrade with associated landscaping and hardscaping. It is an RDA.
Hi, my name is Carmen Shea from Shea Environmental Services, and I'm here representing the homeowner, Gerald Weiner. And so basically what we have is we've got a septic system that failed because it doesn't comply with the Board of Health regulations for separation to groundwater. So in order to remedy that, we're going to put in a new system with a tank, brand new pump chamber, a new leaching field. But in order to do that, we're working from the area between the front of the house and the street. And right there in that photo at the bottom, right along that gravel driveway. So what we're probably going to have to do is, remove the driveway, obviously, some of the landscaping that is in the front of the house, more towards the left end where, if you're facing from the street to the house, to put the tanks in, and probably a portion of a retaining wall that exists on the street side. You see where those Leland cypress or arborvitae are, right between the cobblestones, and those is a small retaining wall. And so essentially, we're going to put in a new septic system to comply with the Board of Health regulations, and then restore everything pretty much as you see it. We're not altering any elevation, even though there is a pump chamber. The system is underground, but it will then meet the 5-foot separation with the groundwater adjustment that the town's looking for. And aside from that, we're just looking to make it look like it does now. The site is within an AE flood zone, and the proposed work is within, I believe, the closest area is around 82 feet from the wetlands. But we're not going any closer. We're not doing any work that's, beyond street to house.
Drew?
So pretty straightforward. Board of Health does have the application on file under review. Your wetland resource areas are those flood zone for where the scope of work is taking place, and within the buffer zone to salt marsh PVW on the water side of the property. So no impact to any of the resource areas. There is going to be disturbance within the flood zone, but it's an area that's been heavily hardscaped and landscaped over the years. So when you mentioned that everything's going to be replaced, or back to pretty much as close to existing conditions as possible, the two oaks in the front island there, are those both coming out as well as a result of this? I would.
No, they're not.
They're not. Okay.
They're not, because the septic system actually that's existing, well, the new system won't be in that area, but the septic system that's existing is, if you were facing the house from the street and you had that oak to your right side, from just before that oak all the way to almost the, what would be the left corner of the front property corner there. So I'm also an installer as well, so I'm going to be physically doing the work, which I know is unusual. But I like to work with machinery, so, I hate being in my office all the time. So essentially, what we're going to do is remove the chamber. There are leaching galleys, concrete galleys that are there now with stone around them. We're going to remove the stone from one side and the leaching galleys themselves, so that we perform the 5-foot strip out that the Board of Health is going to require, and then essentially leave the remainder. Honestly, the system's hardly used, and it didn't fail from a hydraulic failure standpoint. So there's no leachate issues or anything like that. It's strictly the separation to groundwater based on the current regulations, that the Board of Health has. The permit actually has been already issued from Board of Health. It's been approved and paid for, and it's in my hands. So, Glenn Harrington is happy with it. We did go through one revision because I was going to try to put it where the existing system was, but that was so close to the street that everybody was a little bit worried about that, and also damage to the asphalt. So we pushed it back, which is why we're a little bit more into the 100-foot buffer. And that's the only way he would approve it, so.
Okay. Do you anticipate any, I'm sorry, go ahead.
If I understood correctly, that oak tree in the picture in the upper left is not going to be impacted, because you're going to be working between there and the house.
Yes.
Okay, so if you're on that side, I was just gonna give you fair warning to talk to the homeowners association over there, because they prize that green strip and all of the plantings there.
Oh, I'm sure.
Just to be a
he'll
good neighbor, that's all.
I will try to be a very good neighbor. Actually, all the material is going to have to be trucked off-site as we dig it, because we have literally no location to even stockpile,
Also,
you
there
know.
won't be any piles of fill there, so no.
I can't see, I can't see how I could do it otherwise, honestly.
Yeah.
You know, without it being a super mess, and, you know, if we had a rain event like today, there'd be, you know, silt going down the street, and everybody would be you'd get a lot of phone calls.
We can't have that.
No other comments?
I am actually going to put some hay bales, though, which are noted on the plan
Yeah,
from the corner, you know, sort of like along the perimeter of the work. It's really far, you know, it's removed from the work area, but it's, you know, as a precautionary, just in the event that we have some crazy thing like this happen the last few days, you know, while we're working.
I would move for a negative determination in regard to the application of Sandra Weiner, 107 Tide Run.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Two people here.
Long time no see.
Afternoon. Good evening, I should say. My name's Tom Bunker.
I just gotta open the hearing first.
Oh, I'm sorry.
My bad. I led you on.
I'm opening the 627 hearing for Richard H. Saul, Sonia L. LaChance, Barry A. Saul, and Louis S. Saul, 351 Monoscoy Road. This is for the proposed demolition, reconstruction, and expansion of the garage and modification of subsurface sewage disposal septic system. It is an RDA.
Yes. Thank you. Again, to start off, my name is Tom Bunker with BSS Design. For the record, this is an RDA as advertised to tear down the existing garage, which is on our plan and in the picture circled there, and build a larger 3-bay garage. Most of this construction is in the footprint of the existing garage, and it's a little hard to see on there, but it's also within the area which is already part of the driveway. Underneath the label where it says proposed 3-bay parking garage, there is a line there. So I don't have the exact number, but it's between the existing garage and the existing driveway, there's very little or almost no increase in coverage with the new garage. There are 6 trees that have to be taken down. This is a project that is in flood zone only. The nearest resource area other than flood zone is 121 feet to the marsh from the corner of the garage. The property, as you can see in the aerial photo, is probably more than 50%, well, taking out the driveway, but at least 25% naturally vegetated, mainly inland from the site, with some natural vegetation along the waterfront also. We will be providing dry wells for the roof drainage, and the septic system was recently upgraded with a pump chamber, which brought the septic, it is probably more than 100 feet more inland than when it had been. There's a pump chamber that brought the septic up to a higher elevation, up to elevation 11, the highest point on the site. And this really hasn't gone to the Board of Health yet, but there are no variances that will be required for it. It is an expansion of the system, and this is partly for what will be coming not on this plan, I believe, but on part of this proposed structure. It shows as a finished floor elevation of 14.7, and that at some time after Board of Appeals, I believe, they hope to put an apartment up there or more bedrooms, but that's actually not even on the plan at the moment. This is for the garage with no habitable space, but there is, I think, a washroom in there for, and that's why it's connected to the septic system at this time.
So the septic upgrade is being put in place in anticipation of a possible accessory
Yes.
apartment?
Even for this, even though this garage conforms to zoning, this site plan has to go to the Board of Appeals because the existing house doesn't conform to zoning. So this itself is going to the Zoning Board of Appeals, but I don't think there's any plan at the moment to bring any issue of a habitable space or an apartment to the Board of Appeals at this time. But the system is being expanded in anticipation of that, yes.
So did you say that it hasn't gone to the Board of Health?
It has, and I was just looking at this, and I don't know if we, should have, this plan, I think we might have got a little ahead of ourselves because we know it's sand, but we hadn't done, I think maybe the test pit might have just been done, so that the plan hasn't been finally completed as far
There
as
has
the
been
details.
a perk test it's in review.
Subject to their approval.
Right, yeah, exactly. I would like to see, I know it's not gonna affect the amount of natural vegetation on the lot and the number of trees that are proposed, but I didn't see anything flagged. It's not necessarily a requirement under an RDA. I would just like to see it in the field, to have the trees flagged that are proposed to be
He did,
removed.
yeah, okay, he did state the limit of work, and anybody, yeah, there are.
Okay, well, yeah.
But there are, yeah, I
It's-
didn't have a mistake,
I just-
flag the trees.
Just
yeah.
so, it's
Yeah,
not
we can
assumed
do
that
that.
other trees are coming down, just so we're all on the same page, that's all.
Yeah,
It's not a
we
big
can do
deal,
that.
but I do know, yeah, it was within the work limits, but,
I motion for a negative determination with the condition that the homeowner flag the trees, and this would be pending the Board of Health approval for the proposed demolition, reconstruction, and expansion of the garage and modification of subsurface sewage at 351 Monomoskoye Road.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Negative determination. Pointing that out. I'm opening the 6:30 hearing for Robert and Leslie O'Malley, 151 Timber Lane Drive. This is for the proposed demolition and reconstruction of decks within the same footprint. It is an RDA.
Good evening. My name's Lou DeMayo. I'm representing Robert and Leslie O'Malley as the contractor. And they just purchased the house and found out they have a lot of things to do. And one of the main things is this deck was pretty raggedy constructed, and I'm not sure when it was. But it needs to be redone, as well as the balconies on the top. We're not sure how safe they are. So we're getting a design done that will bring everything to code, which will include new footings and so on. And one of the issues is that the pond is right down below that hill, and some of the pictures, you can see most of the water on the lower left. Pretty steep hill there. And we're right on the edge with the deck. So we're not changing the footprint. Everything will be the same size, just reinforcing the owners that everything will be safe at this point.
Pretty straightforward. It recommended a permit application for this because it is within the 0 to 10-foot setback of a almost 1-to-1 bank, a 2-to-1. So just by virtue of proximity to the bank, but there is no change in footprint. But we just wanted to be assured, how the work was going to be carried out in such close proximity to the top of the bank. And I did meet with the contractor on site, explained in very good detail about how it was going to be done. No impact to the top of the bank at all. It's all just in keeping with the existing footprint, and looking at the deck, especially from underneath, it is very worrisome. I don't think we walked up on top, did we? Just underneath.
You chicken.
That's all gravel and hardscape underneath.
If you were bigger, you might not have done it.
So, pretty straightforward.
And no trees will be, there's no trees affected.
I did say that they may want to
I
look at
I
that.
recommended
because
that, yeah.
That one beech tree there that you can see is directly in front of the deck. 90% of that crown is going right out over the house. And so it is something that I recommend they should take a look at. In all likelihood, it probably would have to be removed because it is like within inches of the deck. And it's a massive beech tree.
Beech or birch?
Beech.
Beach.
Yeah, it's beech. It kind of looks like a birch from the
from
light,
that
but
picture.
yeah,
light did it,
it's all beech trees on this bank, almost 100%.
And they're not small.
All very big trees, so, but it's certainly something the homeowner should look at moving forward.
I would move for a negative determination regarding the application of Robert and Leslie O'Malley at 151 Timberlane Drive.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So we have a couple down at the bottom of the agenda.
I'm sorry?
We have a requested for a 3-year extension, and we have a request for a continuance
signatures.
at the bottom of the agenda.
We got the Marsters and Pennell.
There's no more continuances. That's the end of the agenda, for that last one.
I get to see the game. What about the 651?
So what is it?
Because you want to continue to December 12th.
I'm sorry?
651.
651.
651. The last
It's an
item.
extension, isn't it?
Requested
There's a
to-
648 and a 651.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't have the most recent. 651.
So,
Oh, yes, I'm
So
sorry.
I'll-
I didn't have that on my agenda. I didn't have the most recent agenda, sorry. So yes,
So
that
I-
will need to be opened, and, because they had originally, it was supposed to be, it was continued to tonight's meeting, and the applicants had requested an additional continuance to December 12th.
yep. So we also have an extension at 648.
No, that's just paperwork.
That's just,
That's
that is
paperwork.
an extension of the permit order conditions
Okay.
to extend. There was nothing.
I'm
to
opening
discuss.
the 651 hearing for Francis Pennell, 76 Triton Way. This is for the proposed removal of existing patios and installation of an in-ground pool, decking, hardscaping, and mitigation planning. We have been asked to continue to December 12th at 6:03 PM.
Second. Oops.
So moved.
Okay, you just
I
opened.
guess your second is going to be okay, even though it's out of order. We'll do that. I'm not,
I didn't mean to be
you
getting.
don't have to be formal about it.
You were just.
All in favor?
Aye.
I,
Thank you.
Aye. It's continued.
All right.
Okay, Drew?
So, 87 Hoople Road, I do apologize, I still have not been able to reach the homeowners. I think it's just gonna come down to an impromptu site visit without their awareness. So I haven't scheduled anything yet, I apologize, Dale, I just wanted to try and make them aware that we were coming, rather than just showing up. So I will make that happen next week without fail. The last item is that we have a full quorum tonight, so it's time for the turnover for chairman and vice chairman. So I'll leave it in your capable hands to discuss and decide how you want to proceed with that. We're a little late to the game with this one. We wanted to plan it at the end of each fiscal year, and we're past that by a wide margin.
So I'm open to nominations for all three offices, chairman, vice chair, and secretary. Is there anyone who wish to serve in any of those capacities?
I'd be willing to serve as vice chairman, Mr. Chairman, if the current vice chairman is interested in a different title.
Willing to do anything for the commission. I await your pleasure.
I don't know if it's
Who's our
proper for
current
the
secretary?
We don't have one, actually. And the role of the secretary is actually to do exactly what I've been doing for the last several meetings, which is pulling the files out and distributing the plans and
I
collecting them
nominate
up
Drew
and
McManus.
nameplates and all of that fun stuff.
I don't know if it's appropriate for the chairman to make a nomination or not, so would you like to nominate,
Pardon?
would you like to make a nomination for as just discussed, perhaps?
So what would you three like to do? Why don't we just get to that?
Right.
So, you would like to be vice chairman, and Brad, do you want to be chairman again?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because
Because you kind of keep switching between the two of you.
Just go with the flow. But no, when we changed around, I've been the chairman. One of the things that I was probably an instigator of, we need to rotate these jobs because,
Absolutely.
you know, my dear friend Jack Fitzsimmons did it for 20-something years. And no one ever got around to saying, Jack, it's time to rotate these assignments. So it went on.
Right.
And so I said, okay, we need to change these kinds of things. And everybody agreed. So, you know, I actually worked on some people to take over roles. And anyway, then it was my turn to step up. And then after some period of time, and I don't remember how long, I cooked up the idea that I needed to step aside and someone else needed to step in. And that's how we got this fine gentleman to my left involved here. And I stepped down. And so it's probably about the same length of time that he served that I've been serving as vice chairman.
But we definitely need to get somebody
Yep.
new going on this, and I think serving as a vice chair is a good incentive for figuring out how to do it when you get called upon. 'Cause
Yeah,
every time the chair doesn't show up, then it's your job.
Right.
So if everyone's happy with that.
And there's really no role for the secretary, is what we're really saying.
No.
But,
Sure there is.
oh, okay.
Well, I think you should fill the roles if there are three positions.
Oh,
There are
absolutely.
three positions, so.
This is what I would say, does Dale want to do
Sure.
the secretary, and then that way their three roles are filled?
Sure.
It's
If that's-
certainly healthy for every organization to keep mixing it up and don't have people there forever.
Right.
Everyone should
Yes.
come forward, new people should be invited,
Yes.
who have energy and things to add.
We will
so-
lend all of the moral support that you need
Right.
in your new positions.
Right, and is this for a 2-year term, is that what it is?
We want to do it every year.
Every
That's what
year,
we-
okay.
during right around the fiscal year.
So I'll nominate Chad to be vice chair and Dale to be secretary and Brad to be chairman for the next year. Do I hear a second?
Second.
All in
Sounds
favor? Aye.
Aye.
Very good.
How's that?
You up, the way you handled that one.
So we're just gonna have a straight vote on that ticket. Does anyone else wish to run in opposition to any of the three named individuals? So, seeing none, is for votes against? Votes for?
Okay,
Aye. I believe we have a new slate.
One last update, Caitlin's and the Friends of the Mashpee National Wildlife Refuge presentation at Knockabout this Saturday has been canceled because of the weather. So they'll reschedule and we'll let everybody know.
Yes, thank you.
I feel bad for Kate, she was not.
She was prepared to keep us out.
Actually, can you hold on? Turn it on Saturday.
No,
but
I
everybody
can't
knows there's
guarantee
no
that.
way. So
I didn't
she
have
really didn't have much choice.
That's rough.
Yeah, it's a lot of work she put in to get this organized and she was pretty upset.
At the
about that.
office.
I don't blame her, you know.
Pens all
If it
the
was
time.
forecasted like it is today, I
"Give 'em
would
back."
totally understand.
I
Saturday's
grab
supposed
them
to be
many times. I
fine
stick them
noon,
in the
it's supposed to
car
kind of
right
fizzle
there
out
with
and then it's supposed to
where
go
the
on.
coffee
Okay,
cup is supposed to
so
go.
we are
Season, Bailey.
still in a meeting.
So I vote to adjourn?
Let's move to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.
Wow. We got 16, 17 minutes to kick off, something like that?
Yeah.